The day my mother stole my future started like any other Thursday, except this time I caught her red-handed with my bank statement spread across the kitchen counter. I stood frozen in the doorway, watching her perfectly manicured fingers trace the numbers that represented 4 years of my hard work and savings. My name is Isabella, and I'd spent my entire life trying to earn my mother's approval. But standing there, seeing her scrutinize my personal finances without permission, I finally understood that nothing would ever be enough. "Isabella, darling, I didn't hear you come in," she said, not even bothering to hide the papers. "We need to discuss something important." I gripped the doorframe harder. "Those are my private statements, Mom." "Private?" She laughed that airy laugh she reserved for when she thought someone was being ridiculous. "Sweetheart, I'm your mother. Nothing is private from me." "What did you do?" My voice came out barely above a whisper. She straightened up, smoothing her designer blouse. "Your brother's wedding is coming up, and as you know, these things are expensive. Donovan deserves the absolute best." My stomach dropped. "You didn't. The venue alone costs—" "That's my college fund." I stepped into the kitchen, hands shaking. "I've been saving since high school. Every extra shift, every bonus, every birthday check. And it's being put to good use," she cut in. "Your brother is marrying into the Addams family. This wedding needs to be perfect." I grabbed the statements off the counter. The transfer had already gone through. Nearly everything I'd saved, gone. "You had no right." "I had every right. I'm still listed on that account from when you were a minor." She reached for her wine glass, taking a casual sip. "Besides, you can always take out student loans like everyone else. Donovan's wedding is a once-in-a-lifetime event." The familiar sting of being second best burned in my chest. "And my education isn't important?" "Of course it is, darling. But you've always been the practical one. Donovan needs this connection with the Addams family. Their influence could really launch his career." My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from Donovan himself. "Need to talk. Meet at Sterling's in 20? "I have to go," I said, already backing away. "Isabella, don't be dramatic about this. Everything I do is for this family." I didn't respond. I couldn't. If I opened my mouth, I'd either scream or cry, and I refused to give her the satisfaction of either. 20 minutes later, I burst into Sterling's apartment where my brother was already waiting. One look at my face and Sterling, my best friend since middle school, wordlessly handed me a glass of wine. "She did it, didn't she?" Donovan asked, his face grim. I nodded, downing half the glass in one go. "Every penny, Don, for your perfect wedding to your perfect bride." Sterling settled onto the couch beside me. "That's literally theft. We could report her." "She's still on the account," I said bitterly. "Legally, she had every right." Donovan stood up, pacing the room. "This ends now. I can't watch her destroy your life like she tried to destroy mine." I looked up at him, surprised by the steel in his voice. My brother had always been Mom's golden child, the one who could do no wrong. But something in his expression had changed. "What do you mean?" I asked. He stopped pacing and turned to face me. "You remember 2 years ago, when I wanted to start my own business instead of joining Dad's firm? And suddenly you changed your mind?" The pieces started clicking together. "She threatened you, didn't she? Threatened, manipulated, blackmailed, take your pick." He sat down across from me. "But this wedding, it's not what she thinks it is. And if you're willing to help me, we can turn her perfect plan into our escape route." Sterling leaned forward, intrigued. "What exactly are you suggesting?" A slow smile spread across Donovan's face, the kind of smile I hadn't seen since we were kids plotting to steal cookies from the kitchen. "How would you like your money back, Bella? With interest?" I set down my wine glass, meeting his gaze. "I'm listening." "Mom thinks she's orchestrating the society wedding of the year," he said. "But what if we give her a ceremony she'll never forget? One that finally shows her exactly what happens when you push your children too far." For the first time since finding those bank statements, I felt a spark of hope. "Tell me everything. Remember when we used to hide in the treehouse?" Donovan asked, refilling my wine glass. We'd moved to Sterling's balcony, the city lights twinkling below us like fallen stars. Every time Mom had one of her society parties, our secret rebellion headquarters, I smiled, the memory warming me more than the wine. Where we'd eat contraband candy and plot our great escape. Well, baby sister, it's time for the great escape to finally happen. Sterling returned from the kitchen with a fresh bottle. Okay, you two have been cryptic long enough. What's this master plan? Donovan leaned forward, lowering his voice despite us being alone. Remington isn't really my fiancé. What? I nearly choked on my wine. She's my business partner. We've been building a tech startup in secret for the past year. He pulled out his phone, showing us a sleek website. Mom thinks Rem is just the perfect society bride, daughter of her country club friends. She has no idea Rem's trust fund went into developing our app. Sterling whistled. That's actually brilliant. But the wedding? I asked. All my money? Is going straight back to you, Donovan assured me. Plus a share in our company. Rem and I needed one big investment to launch and, well, he shrugged. Mom volunteered without knowing it. I stood up, pacing the balcony. She'll never forgive us. That's kind of the point, Bella. Donovan caught my arm, stopping me. Look at me. When was the last time you did something without wondering if Mom would approve? The question hit hard. I thought about every career choice, every relationship, every outfit I'd second-guessed because of her potential reaction. Exactly, he said, reading my expression. She's controlled us our whole lives. But here's the thing. I'm not actually getting married. What do you mean? Sterling sat up straighter. Oh my God, you're going to leave her at the altar? Better. Donovan's eyes sparkled with mischief. We're going to give her exactly what she wants. A society wedding that everyone will talk about for years. Just not the way she expects. Don't keep us in suspense, Sterling prodded. Rem's not walking down that aisle, Donovan said. You are, Bella. The wine glass nearly slipped from my hand. What? Think about it. Mom's spent months planning this elaborate wedding, inviting everyone who's anyone, making sure all eyes will be on our family. So let's give them something to see. You want me to marry you? I couldn't help laughing. That's insane. Not marry me, obviously, but imagine Mom's face when her perfect society wedding turns into her children publicly exposing her manipulation. We'll have a captive audience of all her peers. Sterling jumped in. My brother Grayson works in events. He could help coordinate everything behind the scenes. I sat back down, mind racing. But what about Rem? Won't this hurt her reputation? Already handled, Donovan assured me. She'll be called away on urgent business the week before. Mom will be too invested in the wedding to cancel. Then, at the ceremony, I show up instead of Rem, I finished, the plan taking shape in my mind. With documented proof of every manipulation, every threat, every stolen dollar, Donovan added. Projected on screens for all her society friends to see. Sterling was already typing on his phone. Grayson can handle the technical side. He's been wanting to get back at your mom since she got him blacklisted from planning country club events. I took a deep breath, memories flooding back. Mom missing my graduation because Donovan had a golf tournament. Her forgetting to submit my art school applications. The constant comparisons and subtle put-downs. You know what this means, right? I asked Donovan. If we do this, there's no going back. No more family holidays, no inheritance, no more walking on eggshells, he interrupted. No more living our lives according to her script. He took my hands in his. Remember what we used to say in the treehouse? Marshall kids against the world, I whispered our old motto. Damn right. He squeezed my hands. So what do you say, Bella? Ready to crash a wedding? I looked at Sterling, who gave me an encouraging nod, then back at my brother. In that moment, I felt like that little girl in the treehouse again, dreaming of freedom. Let's do it, I said, raising my glass, to the great escape. We clinked glasses as the city lights twinkled below, conspirators in the night plotting a revolution that would start with a wedding march. You're absolutely sure about this? Remington asked, adjusting her fake engagement ring under the cafe's patio umbrella. We'd chosen this spot carefully, far enough from Mom's usual haunts, but public enough to avoid suspicion if anyone saw us together. For the 10th time, yes, I assured her. But are you? Your reputation? We'll be fine, she cut in, stirring her latte. The tech world loves a good scandal, and our app launches the week after the wedding. Perfect timing for maximum publicity. Sterling arrived with Grayson in tow, laptop bag slung over his shoulder. "Ladies, your technical wizard has arrived." "Keep it down," I hissed, though I couldn't help smiling. Grayson had the same dramatic flair as his sister. He pulled out his laptop, showing us a detailed timeline. "Okay, so I've got everything mapped out. The wedding's in 3 weeks. Rem, you'll need to leave town next Thursday." "Already booked my flight to Silicon Valley," she nodded. "Very public, very traceable." "Perfect. That gives Marin 9 days to panic, but not enough time to cancel without losing all the deposits." Grayson clicked through his presentation. "I've arranged for the venue's AV system to be upgraded the day before. They think it's a complimentary service." Sterling leaned over his shoulder. "What about the guests?" "All 300 of them," I groaned. "Mom made sure to invite everyone who's ever meant anything in this city." "That works in our favor," Remington pointed out. "More witnesses means more pressure on her to maintain her composure." My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "Dress fitting at 3. Don't be late this time." "Speaking of composure," I sighed, showing them the message. "I have to go play supportive sister for the afternoon." "Actually, this is perfect timing," Grayson said. "I need you to plant this in your mom's office while you're there." He handed me what looked like a normal USB drive. "It'll give me remote access to her computer." I stared at it. "You want me to hack my mother?" "We need proof of the money transfers," Remington said gently, "and any other dirt we can find. The more evidence we have, the less she can deny." "Plus," Sterling added, "we need to make sure she hasn't found anything suspicious on her own." The USB felt heavy in my hand. "What if she catches me?" "Tell her you're backing up wedding photos," Grayson suggested. "She'll eat that up, the devoted sister helping with precious memories." 2 hours later, I was standing in Mom's home office, heart pounding as I plugged in the drive. The dress fitting had gone exactly as expected. Mom fawning over Remington while passive-aggressively suggesting I do something about my figure before the wedding photos. "Isabella?" Mom's voice called from downstairs. "Where did you disappear to?" "Just getting some water," I called back, watching the USB light blink. Grayson had said it would only take 30 seconds, but each one felt like an hour. "Well, hurry down. Remington's mother is bringing over fabric samples for the table settings." The light turned solid green. I pulled out the drive just as Mom appeared in the doorway. "What are you doing in here?" I held up my phone. "Sorry, needed to charge it. All that photo taking drained my battery." She softened slightly. "You did take some lovely pictures today. It's nice to see you finally taking an interest in your brother's happiness." I swallowed the bitter retort that rose in my throat. 3 more weeks. Just 3 more weeks of playing the dutiful daughter. That evening, I met the others at Sterling's apartment again. Grayson was already deep in Mom's files. "Found it," he announced as I walked in. "Full documentation of the transfer from your account, plus emails to the bank authorizing it without your knowledge." "That's illegal, right?" Sterling asked. "Technically, she had account access," Remington said. "But the emails prove premeditation. She knew exactly what she was doing." "There's more," Grayson added, still scrolling. "Emails to Donovan's old business partners, threatening to pull strings if they worked with him. Letters to art schools withdrawing Isabella's applications. Even a blacklist she maintains for the country club." I sank onto the couch, the weight of years of manipulation hitting me all at once. She really did control everything. "Not anymore," Sterling squeezed my shoulder. "In 3 weeks, everyone sees the real Marin." My phone buzzed again, another text from Mom. "Don't forget, bridal brunch tomorrow. Wear the blue dress I bought you. The green one makes you look sallow." I showed it to the others, managing a weak smile. The countdown begins. "To the mother of all wedding crashes," Grayson raised his glass. We all clinked glasses, but my hand was shaking slightly. The plan was in motion. There was no turning back now. "She's called 6 times in the last hour," I told Donovan, watching my phone buzz for the 7th time. We were huddled in his apartment, going over final details while Mom melted down over Remington's sudden business emergency. "Let it ring," he said, sorting through documents we'd pulled from Mom's computer. "The more desperate she gets, the less likely she is to cancel." "You don't think she'll just find you another society bride?" "In 9 days?" he laughed. Even Mom's networking skills have limits. My phone started ringing again. This time, it was Remington. You need to hear this, she said when I answered, putting the call on speaker. Your mom just offered to buy my company to keep me in town for the wedding. Donovan nearly choked on his coffee. She what? Offered 7 figures, sight unseen. I almost feel bad turning her down. Almost. She's really losing it, I marveled. Did she say anything about me? Oh yeah, Remington's voice dripped with sarcasm. Apparently you're inconsolable about missing your brother's special day. She's telling everyone you've taken to your bed with grief. Sterling, who'd been quietly working on her laptop, snorted. That explains the sympathy texts I've been getting. Half our high school class thinks you're having a breakdown. Perfect, Donovan said. The more dramatic she makes this, the better our reveal will be. My phone buzzed yet again, Mom calling for the 8th time. With a deep breath, I finally answered. Darling, where have you been? Her voice was frantic. We have a crisis. I heard. I tried to sound appropriately devastated. Poor Rem, having to leave so suddenly. This is a disaster. The Addams family connection was everything. But don't worry, I have a plan. I've called every eligible family in our circle. Mom, Donovan cut in, having moved closer to the phone. Stop. The wedding is happening as scheduled. But darling, without a bride. I said it's happening. Trust me. There was a long pause. When Mom spoke again, her voice had that dangerous sweetness I knew too well. Donovan, dear, I know you're upset, but we have to be realistic. The guests, the vendors, the press release I've already sent out. Mom, I jumped in, following our script. What if I helped? I could stand in for Rem, just for the ceremony photos. We look similar enough from a distance. The silence that followed was deafening. I could practically hear her mind racing, calculating angles and appearances. That's actually quite clever, she said slowly. Yes, that could work. We'd need to alter the dress, of course. And you'll have to do something about your hair. Whatever you think is best, Mom, I said, catching Donovan's approving nod. Come over right now. We need to start preparations immediately. And Isabella? Wear the blue dress, the green one. Makes me look sallow. I know. After hanging up, I let out a shaky breath. Sterling immediately handed me a glass of wine. She bought it, Donovan said, sounding almost surprised. Hook, line, and sinker. Of course she did, Sterling said. You know your mom. She'd rather have a fake wedding than no wedding at all. Grayson arrived an hour later with updated plans. Okay, venue's confirmed we can access the AV system the night before. I've edited the footage, emails, bank statements, everything set to music. Very dramatic. What about the guests? I asked. Already handled, Sterling said. I've been seeding rumors about a special surprise at the ceremony. Everyone's intrigued. My phone chimed with a text from Mom. Ordered rush alterations for the dress. Be at the boutique tomorrow at 9 a.m. sharp. No excuses. Here we go, I showed them the message. Countdown to transformation. You know she's going to be impossible for the next week, Donovan warned. When isn't she? I grabbed my purse, preparing to head to Mom's house. But this time, every criticism, every passive-aggressive comment, every manipulation is just more fuel for the fire. That's my girl. Sterling hugged me goodbye. Remember, you're not just playing along anymore. You're gathering ammunition. As I headed out, Donovan caught my arm. Bella, wait. Are you sure you're ready for this? Once we start the dress fittings, there's no backing out. I thought about my empty bank account, about years of being second best, about all the dreams I'd given up to keep the peace. I've been ready my whole life, I said. It's time Mom learned what happens when you push your children too far. Marshal kids against the world, he offered our old motto. Against the world, I agreed, stepping out into the evening, ready to begin the final act of our longest-running rebellion. The wedding dress felt like armor as I stood in front of the boutique's 3-way mirror. Mom circled me like a hawk, pinching fabric and muttering about emergency alterations. Stand straighter, she commanded, tugging at the bodice. Really, Isabella, if you'd maintained your high school figure, we wouldn't be rushing these adjustments. The seamstress, pinning the hem, shot me a sympathetic look. The dress is gorgeous on her, Mrs. Marshall. Your daughter looks like a princess. She's not the bride, Mom snapped. She's just standing in for photos. But yes, we need her to look adequate. My phone buzzed on the nearby chair. A message from Grayson. AV system hacked. All set for tomorrow. Who keeps texting you? Mom demanded. This is important, Isabella. Focus. Just Sterling, asking about makeup tomorrow. I lied smoothly. She's still doing my hair, right? Mom's lips tightened. I suppose, though I still think we should have hired professionals. Another text came through, this time from Donovan. Mom's credit card records came through. Wait till you see what she spent your money on. Isabella, phone away, I complied, but not before sending a quick to both messages. The seamstress continued working, and I caught fragments of Mom's running commentary. Thank goodness you and Remington are similar heights. Have to do something about that birthmark on your shoulder. Maybe we can Photoshop it later. The boutique door chimed and Sterling breezed in with a garment bag. Emergency veil delivery. Oh, thank God! Mom rushed over. Please tell me it's the right shade of ivory. While Mom fussed over the veil with the boutique owner, Sterling sidled up to me. How you holding up? Ready for this to be over, I whispered. Did you see what Donovan found? Girl, you're going to flip. She spent part of your money on a spa retreat for herself. Called it wedding stress relief. The seamstress finished pinning the last section. All done, honey? You can change now. In the dressing room, I carefully hung up the dress, my hands shaking slightly. One more day, just one more day of playing along. Isabella? Mom called through the door. Hurry up. We still need to check the table settings and confirm the flowers. Coming! I changed quickly, emerging to find Mom already on her phone. No, absolutely not, she was saying. I ordered peonies, not garden roses. This is unacceptable. Do you know who I am? Do you know how much we're spending? Sterling rolled her eyes behind Mom's back, making me stifle a laugh. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of last-minute details. Mom micromanaged everything, from the exact shade of the napkins to the precise timing of the Dove release. Now remember, she instructed as we finally headed to our cars. Rehearsal dinner at 7. Wear the blue dress. Not the green one, Sterling and I finished in unison. Mom's eyes narrowed. This isn't funny. Tomorrow has to be perfect. The Addams family may have lost their bride, but we still have appearances to maintain. As soon as Mom drove away, I slumped against my car. I can't believe we're actually doing this. Having second thoughts? No, I straightened up. Just first-time jitters about publicly humiliating my mother. My phone rang. Donovan this time. You need to get to Grayson's now, he said when I answered. Wait till you see what we found in Mom's emails. 20 minutes later, I sat in Grayson's home office, staring at his computer screen in disbelief. She did what? I whispered. Contacted every art school you applied to, Donovan confirmed. Told them you had a history of plagiarism, that accepting you would be a liability. Grayson pulled up more emails. She also threatened to pull country club memberships from anyone who hired you for graphic design work. That's why I couldn't get any local clients, I realized, years of rejection suddenly making sense. It gets better, Remington chimed in from the video call on Grayson's second screen. She's been paying people to report my company's social media accounts as scams, trying to tank us before we launch. Tomorrow can't come soon enough, I said, anger burning away any remaining doubts. My phone lit up with another text from Mom. Don't be late to rehearsal, and please do something with your hair. We can't have you looking like a charity case in front of everyone. I showed the others the message, then deleted it with a decisive tap. You know what? I said, standing up. I think I'll wear the green dress tonight. Sterling grinned. That's my girl. One last act of rebellion before the grand finale. Mom wants perfect? I grabbed my keys. Let's show her what perfect really looks like. 5 minutes until showtime, Sterling whispered, adjusting my veil in the bridal suite. How are you feeling? Like I'm about to throw up or pass out. Maybe both. Well, don't. This dress was expensive. She stepped back, admiring her handiwork. You look incredible, by the way. Mom's going to lose it when she sees you. The door burst open and Mom swept in, already in full command mode. Everyone out except the bride. I mean, Isabella and Sterling. She waited until the bridesmaids filed out before turning to me. Well, at least you didn't ruin your hair this time. Thanks, Mom. That means a lot. She missed the sarcasm, too busy checking her phone. The photographer's ready. Donovan's in position. The Addams family sent a message expressing their disappointment, but they're here, front row. She finally looked up. Isabella, are you listening? Every word. Good. Now remember, you're just standing in for photos. Keep your head high, smile graciously, and... A knock at the door interrupted her. Grayson poked his head in. 2-minute warning, everyone. And Mrs. Marshall, you're needed in the main hall. This better be important, Mom huffed, hurrying out. As soon as she was gone, Grayson slipped inside. Everything's set. Screens are ready. Footage is queued up. The moment you reach the altar, I hit play. My hands were shaking so badly Sterling had to help me with my bouquet. What if she tries to stop it? That's what security's for, Grayson winked. Being the venue's preferred vendor has its perks. Another knock. This time it was Donovan. Ready, sis? You clean up nice, I managed, taking in his tuxedo. Very convincing groom. Learned from the best, he grinned. Mom's got everyone seated. It's time. Sterling hugged me tight. Go get 'em, Tiger. The wedding march began as I took my place behind the closed doors. Through the wood, I could hear the murmur of 300 guests, all of Mom's carefully cultivated social circle gathered to witness her perfect society wedding. Last chance to back out, Donovan whispered, offering his arm. I took it, squeezing perhaps a bit too tight. Not a chance. The doors swung open, the music swelled, and there, at the end of the aisle, I saw Mom's face transform from proud satisfaction to absolute horror as she realized who was walking down the aisle. Whispers rippled through the crowd. I caught fragments as we passed. Where's Remington? Is that his sister? What's going on? Mom started to rise from her seat, but Grayson was faster. The screens around the venue flickered to life, displaying the first email. RE, withdrawal of Isabella Marshall's art school applications. More emails followed, each one larger than the last. Bank statements, text messages, every piece of evidence we'd gathered projected for all to see. We reached the altar just as Mom's voice filled the room through the speakers. Of course I took her college fund. Donovan's wedding is more important than her little art hobby. The crowd's whispers turned to gasps. I turned to face them, Donovan at my side, as years of manipulation played out on the screens. Stop this immediately! Mom stood up, her face scarlet. This is ridiculous! Is it, Mom? I spoke into the microphone we'd hidden in my bouquet, my voice carrying through the sound system. More ridiculous than sabotaging your daughter's career? Than stealing her future? Everything I did was for this family. No, Donovan took the mic. Everything you did was for your reputation, your status, your control. The screens showed the final piece. Mom's frantic emails from the past week, offering to buy Remington's company, threatening to destroy her reputation, all to save face at this wedding. You're ruining everything, Mom hissed, advancing toward the altar. 2 security guards smoothly stepped into her path. Actually, Mom, I said, you did that yourself. Every manipulation, every lie, every time you chose your social standing over your children's happiness. It all led to this moment. And now, Donovan added, everyone knows exactly who you are. The crowd was dead silent, hundreds of eyes fixed on Mom as she stood there, trapped between the security guards and the weight of her exposed secrets. This wedding is over, she announced, trying to salvage some dignity. Everyone leave. Oh no, I smiled, channeling her own sweet venom. The party's just getting started. After all, you spent my entire college fund on it. Might as well enjoy it. As if on cue, the band started playing, and Sterling appeared with champagne. The stunned silence broke into nervous laughter, then genuine amusement as guests realized they were witnessing not just a wedding, but a revolution. Mom fled the hall, her perfectly curated world crumbling behind her, and for the first time in my life, I stood tall, no longer in anyone's shadow. Mom was waiting in the bridal suite when I went to change, her perfect posture a stark contrast to the chaos we'd just unleashed. She sat in the vintage armchair like it was a throne, her face a mask of cold fury. "Well," she said as I closed the door, "I hope you're satisfied with yourself." "Actually, I am." I started removing the veil, letting it fall to the floor. For the first time in my life, I did exactly what I wanted instead of what you demanded. "What you wanted?" She stood up, voice rising. "You humiliated me in front of everyone who matters in this city. Do you have any idea what you've done? Showed them the truth?" "The truth?" She laughed bitterly. "The truth is I gave you everything, both of you. Every advantage, every opportunity. Every opportunity to be exactly who you wanted us to be," I cut in. "But the moment we tried to be ourselves, you sabotaged us." The door opened and Donovan walked in, followed by Sterling and Grayson. Mom's eyes narrowed at the reinforcements. "So this is what it's come to? My children conspiring against me with the help?" She gestured dismissively at our friends. "Mom," Donovan stepped forward, "the help just helped expose how you stole from your daughter and blackmailed your son. Maybe show some humility?" "Humility?" She spat the word like poison. "I built this family's reputation from nothing. Everything we have, everything you are, is in spite of you, not because of you," I interrupted. "And by the way, speaking of everything we have," I nodded to Grayson, who pulled out his phone. "The bank's been notified of the fraudulent transfers," he said. "They're reversing everything as we speak." Mom's face went pale. "You can't do that. I had authority." "Obtained through coercion," Sterling chimed in. "The emails prove it. The bank's fraud department was very interested in those." "And that's not all," Donovan added. "The art schools you contacted? They're sending written apologies to Isabella. Turns out they don't appreciate being manipulated into rejecting qualified students." Mom sank back into the chair. "This is how you repay me? After everything I've sacrificed?" "Sacrificed?" I stepped closer. "You sacrificed my dreams for your social climbing. You sacrificed Donovan's business for your country club status. The only thing you never sacrificed was your own ego." "Get out!" Her voice was ice. "All of you. You're no children of mine." "Funny," I said, reaching for the door. "That's the first honest thing you've said all day." We left her there, surrounded by the wreckage of her perfect wedding. In the hall, guests were still mingling, the buzz of scandal electrifying the air. "Isabella!" Mrs. Adams, Remington's mother, caught my arm. "That was quite a performance." I braced for condemnation, but her eyes were twinkling. "Thank you for exposing Marin," she continued. "She's been terrorizing the social circuit for years. No one dared stand up to her until now." Others approached, each with similar stories. Mom's victims and witnesses, finally free to speak their truth. "Your mother blacklisted my catering company last year. She threatened to pull donations from my charity. She spread rumors about my daughter's college admission." Sterling appeared with champagne. "To the fall of the Tyrant Queen?" We clinked glasses as Grayson's phone buzzed. He checked it, grinning. "Bank transfers complete. Isabella, you are officially unrobbed." "And that's not all," Donovan added. "Rem just texted. Our app's pre-launch publicity is through the roof. Turns out a dramatic society wedding scandal is better than any marketing campaign." "Speaking of publicity," Sterling nodded toward the entrance where reporters were gathering. "Looks like Mom's perfect society wedding is making headlines after all." "Let them come," I said, surprising myself with my steadiness. "It's time everyone knew the truth." "What happens now?" Grayson asked. "Now?" I looked around at my real family, my brother who chose truth over privilege, my friends who helped orchestrate our liberation. "Now we celebrate. After all, Mom did pay for an open bar." "And tomorrow?" Donovan asked softly. "Tomorrow we start living our lives without looking over our shoulders. No more manipulation, no more control." "Marshal kids against the world?" he offered. "No," I corrected him, including Sterling and Grayson in our circle. "Family against the world, the family we chose." As we raised our glasses again, I caught a glimpse of Mom slipping out a side door, alone for perhaps the first time in her social climbing life. But I felt no guilt, no regret, only relief and the lightness of finally being free. To new beginnings, I toasted. To truth, Donovan added. To karma, Sterling laughed. And somewhere in the background, the band played on. Your work is incredible, the gallery owner said, studying my latest piece. The emotion, the rawness, it's exactly what we're looking for. I tried to keep my voice steady. So you're interested in showing it? Interested? My dear, I want to feature you as our headline artist for next month's showcase. As she outlined the details, my phone buzzed with notifications. Donovan and Remington's app had just hit 1 million downloads, making headlines in the tech world. Mom would have hated that her stolen money had funded such a successful startup. The gallery owner finished writing up the contract. Just one thing. I noticed you sign your work as Isabella rather than using your family name. The art speaks for itself, I said. It doesn't need my mother's name attached to it. She nodded approvingly. Speaking of which, that wedding video really made waves. Very brave, what you did. It wasn't brave, I corrected her. It was necessary. Leaving the gallery, I headed to Sterling's coffee shop, our new regular meeting spot since the wedding. Donovan was already there, laptop open to another glowing review of their app. There's my famous artist sister, he called out as I approached. Says the tech mogul. I dropped into the chair beside him. Mom would be having fits if she knew how well we're doing without her influence. Actually, Sterling appeared with my usual order. She knows. She's been following both of you online. My brother saw her at the country club yesterday, showing people articles about Donovan's app on her phone. Seriously? I nearly spilled my coffee. Apparently, she's telling everyone she funded your initial startup, Donovan laughed. Technically true, I suppose. Classic mom, I shook my head, taking credit for the very things she tried to prevent. Speaking of prevention, Sterling sat down with us. Guess who just called asking about booking the coffee shop for a reconciliation brunch? My stomach tightened. She didn't. Oh, she did. Said she's ready to forgive us all for the wedding misunderstanding if we agree to let her back into our lives. Wow, Donovan whistled. Her social circle must really be crumbling if she's this desperate. What did you tell her? I asked Sterling. That we're fully booked until the next century. She grinned. Also, that forgiveness requires actual remorse, not just social convenience. My phone buzzed again, an email from one of the art schools Mom had blacklisted me from. They were offering me a guest lecturer position, impressed by my resilience and artistic growth. You should do it, Donovan said, reading over my shoulder. Show everyone what Mom tried to keep hidden. Maybe I will. I forwarded the email to Grayson, who'd become our unofficial PR manager. But first, I need your help with something. I pulled up the gallery contract on my phone. They want an artist's statement for the showcase, something about my journey and influences. Tell them the truth, Sterling suggested, about breaking free and finding your voice. Without mentioning Mom, Donovan added. She doesn't get to be part of this story anymore. The coffee shop door chimed, and we all looked up. For a moment, I thought I saw Mom's silhouette through the window watching us. But then, it was gone, like a ghost of the control she used to have over our lives. You know what's funny? I said, turning back to my family, my real family. She always said we'd fail without her connections, her influence, her money. But look at us now. Successful? Sterling offered. Happy, I corrected. We're finally happy. Donovan raised his coffee cup. To happiness without permission. To success without manipulation, Sterling added. To family, I finished. The kind you choose, not the kind that chooses you. As we clinked cups, I started typing my artist's statement. Art isn't about perfection or control. It's about truth, even when that truth is messy, especially when it's messy. Because in that mess, we find our real selves, our real family, our real strength. The words flowed easily now, no longer constrained by fear of disapproval. Outside, the city moved on, full of people living their own stories of breaking free and finding truth. And somewhere out there, Mom was probably still trying to control her narrative, not realizing she'd lost the only thing that really mattered, us. But that was her story now, not ours. We had our own stories to write, our own paths to follow, our own happiness to create. And for the first time in our lives, we were doing it all without looking over our shoulders, without seeking approval, without compromising who we were. We were free, and that was the greatest success of all.
Hi, I'm Laura, a 28-year-old financial analyst, juggling numbers by day and managing my life by night. I had recently tied the knot with Jake, the love of my life who, unfortunately, spends more time in airports than at home due to his job. Our rented apartment was our little haven, conveniently located next to my workplace, until one day, it became the stage for an unsolicited critique by none other than my mother-in-law, Marge. Jake was away, as usual, when Marge decided to drop by unannounced. The sight that greeted her was my dinner, a takeout box from the local diner, and my less-than-spotless living room. Well, Laura, what do we have here? A takeout queen in her natural habitat? Marge's voice dripped with disdain as she surveyed the apartment. I bit my tongue, trying to keep the peace. Hi, Marge. I wasn't expecting you. Yeah, I had a long day at work, so cooking didn't quite fit into my schedule. Marge clicked her tongue, shaking her head. In my time, no matter how tired we were, we made sure our husbands came home to a clean house and a hot meal. Seems like times have changed, and not for the better. Her words stung, but I wasn't about to let her walk all over me. Times have indeed changed, Marge. Nowadays, we believe in sharing responsibilities. And with Jake away so often, I manage things the best I can. Marge scoffed, her eyes scanning the room like a hawk. Sharing responsibilities? More like shirking them. You do know that a wife's duty is to keep her house in order, don't you? Or is that too old-fashioned for you? I felt my patience wearing thin. Marge, with all due respect, I work hard every day. My job is demanding, and I do my best to balance work and home. Maybe if Jake was around more, things would be different. Her eyes narrowed, and I could tell I hit a nerve. Excuses. Jake works hard to provide for you. The least you could do is make this place look a bit more habitable. The air was thick with tension. Just then, the door opened, and Jake walked in, weary from his travels, but happy to be home. That is until he saw his mother's face. Mom? Laura? What's going on here? Jake asked, sensing the Cold War in his living room. Marge wasted no time. Your wife here seems to think that takeout and clutter are acceptable. I was just trying to give her some friendly advice. Jake looked from Marge to me, the confusion clear in his eyes. He sighed heavily, a man caught between the two most important women in his life. Can we just not do this now? I just got home. The standoff was palpable, the apartment too small for the egos within it. Jake, torn and tired, could only watch as his mother and wife drew the battle lines. The tension in the apartment could be cut with a knife as Marge continued her relentless critique of my homemaking, or according to her, the lack thereof. With Jake back from his trip, I had hoped for some support, but instead, I found myself trapped in a vicious cycle of criticism and defense. Jake, look at this place. It's a mess. And your wife, she can't even cook a proper meal. Is this how you want to live? Marge spat out her words, each one like a slap to my face. I was seething, but I tried to keep my voice level. Marge, I work a full-time job. It's tough to keep everything perfect. I'm doing my best. Jake, weary and torn, ran his hand through his hair. Mom, please. Laura's working hard. It's not easy for her either. Marge wasn't listening. Nonsense. I worked hard too, but I kept a clean home. I cooked. I took care of my family. That's what a wife does. Her words stung, and I couldn't hold back any longer. Working hard? Marge, you've never worked outside of this house. You don't know what it's like to balance a career and a household. Her eyes flashed with anger. How dare you? Taking care of a home, raising children, that's a full-time job. You wouldn't last a day in my shoes. The room was filled with the sound of our raised voices, Jake stuck in the middle, trying to calm the storm. Let's just take a step back, okay? Fighting won't solve anything, Jake said, his voice strained. But Marge was relentless. Solve? The only solution is for Laura to realize her duties as a wife. This modern nonsense won't work. Not under my watch. I felt like I was hitting a brick wall, my efforts to keep the peace futile. Marge, times have changed. Women work now. We contribute, we share responsibilities. It's not the 1950s anymore. She scoffed, dismissing my words. Share responsibilities? More like shirk them. You're his wife, Laura. It's your job to take care of him, take care of this home. The audacity of Marge, my mother-in-law, knew no bounds. Armed with a spare key, a gift from Jake that he now surely regretted, she turned my apartment into her personal domain. She'd clean, rearrange the furniture to her liking, and cook lavish meals for Jake, meals that conspicuously never included a portion for me. I came home one day to find my living room looking like a furniture showroom, everything repositioned, not a single thing where I'd left it. In the kitchen, Marge was humming away, cooking what smelled like a feast, clearly just for Jake. What the hell, Marge? This is my home. You can't just come in here and change everything, I snapped, my patience finally reaching its breaking point. Marge looked at me, her eyes cold. Oh, I'm just making it more comfortable for Jake. He deserves a proper home, not whatever this is, she retorted, her words like daggers. I could feel the anger boiling inside me. Making it comfortable for Jake? What about me, Marge? I live here too, you know. Or does that not matter to you? She shrugged, dismissive and arrogant. If you took better care of this place, I wouldn't have to step in. But you're too busy with your little and easy job to be a proper wife. That was it. I was done playing nice. Easy? You call this easy? You invade my home, criticize my life, and cook for your son as if I don't exist. This stops now, Marge. You're not welcome here anymore. Marge's eyes narrowed, her voice icy. We'll see what Jake has to say about this. I'm sure he'll appreciate knowing how his wife treats his mother. Jake walked in at that moment, the tension in the air almost tangible. What's going on here? He asked, a weary look in his eyes. Before I could say a word, Marge jumped in. Your wife here thinks she can ban me from our home. She says I've never worked a day in my life. Jake looked from me to Marge, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. Can we not do this right now? He pleaded, but it was too late for pleasantries. No, we're doing this now, Jake. Your mom's been overstepping her boundaries for too long. It's about time she realized this is our home, not hers, I said, standing my ground. The standoff continued, a tug-of-war with no clear winner. Jake, caught in the crossfire, seemed lost, unable to choose a side. But one thing was clear, the line had been crossed, and there was no turning back. The battle for respect and boundaries had begun, and I was ready to fight for my place in my own home. The winds of change blew harshly through our lives when Marge's husband, Frank, fell gravely ill. The hospital bills piled up, and Marge, now desperate, saw us, not as family, but as a solution to her financial woes. One dreary evening, Marge cornered us in the living room, her voice laced with urgency. Jake, Laura, you know Frank's condition. We're drowning in bills. It's time you moved in. Help your family out. Jake looked at me, his face a mix of concern and reluctance. Mom, is it really that bad? Laura and I have our own life, our own expenses. Marge's eyes were steely, her resolve unwavering. It's bad, Jake. And family sticks together. It's what we do. Laura will understand, won't you, dear? I felt trapped, the walls of the room closing in on me. Marge, we understand, but moving in? That's a big step. We have our own responsibilities. But Marge wasn't taking no for an answer. Responsibilities? What's more important than family, Laura? Frank's sick, we need help, and you two are talking responsibilities? The pressure was mounting, and Jake, ever the dutiful son, caved. Okay, Mom. We'll move in. But we need to set some ground rules. Marge nodded, a hint of triumph in her eyes. Of course, dear. Anything you need. Packing up our lives into boxes felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life unfold. The apartment, once our private sanctuary, was now just a memory as we stepped into Marge's house, not knowing it was the beginning of a new chapter of trials. Our first evening there, Marge laid down the law. Now, Laura, I expect you to help around here. Cooking, cleaning, you know, the works. It's only fair since you're living under my roof. I was taken aback. Marge, I work full-time. I can't be a housemaid on top of that. Jake understands that. Marge scoffed, her voice dripping with disdain. Work? That's your excuse? Frank's sick, and you're talking about work? No, dear. You're part of this family now, and you'll contribute. The days turned into a blur of work, house chores, and constant criticism. Every effort I made was met with a scowl or a snide remark from Marge. Laura, is this how you clean? And this dinner, it's barely edible. Is this what you call contributing? I tried to defend myself, to hold on to the last shreds of my patience. Marge, I'm doing everything I can. I'm not a machine. I need some understanding, some space. But understanding and space were luxuries Marge wasn't willing to afford me. Space? This is my house, Laura. My rules. You better shape up, or you'll find yourself out on the street. Life in Marge's house turned from challenging to unbearable when Jake left for another business trip. The absence of my husband seemed to embolden Marge, her criticisms becoming more personal and cutting by the day. You know, Laura, you're really not cut out for this. Jake could do so much better. A man like him needs a real woman, not someone who can barely keep a house together. Marge taunted one evening as I tried, in vain, to bring some order to the living room. I felt a surge of anger, but managed to keep my voice steady. Marge, I'm doing everything I can. I work, I clean, I try to make this house a home. What more do you want from me? Her laugh was cold and mocking. What do I want? I want my son to have a wife who knows her place, who takes care of her family. Not someone who thinks a career is more important than her home. The constant belittlement was taking its toll. In a desperate attempt to ease the tension and lighten my load, I decided to invest in the latest home appliances. A state-of-the-art washing machine, a dishwasher, even a robot vacuum cleaner. I hoped these would make my life a little easier and, perhaps, soften Marge's harsh view of me. But even this was twisted into a point of contention. When Marge saw the new appliances, her eyes narrowed, and I knew I was in for another round of criticism. So, this is how you manage, Laura? Throwing money at gadgets to do your work for you? And whose money is it anyway? Squandering Jake's hard-earned cash on these toys, Marge accused, her voice dripping with disdain. I was at my breaking point. Marge, this is my money. I work hard for it, and I have every right to spend it as I see fit. These appliances, they help me manage the house, something you're always criticizing me for not doing properly. But Marge was unyielding. Your money? Please, Laura. We all know you're living off my son. You're just trying to make your life easier while he's out there, working himself to the bone for you. The return of my father-in-law, Frank, from the hospital marked the beginning of a new chapter, one I had hoped would bring some relief. but instead, it added fuel to the already raging fire. His health barred him from returning to work, but it didn't prevent him from joining Marge in her relentless criticism of me. One evening, as I was trying to catch a moment's peace, Frank's voice boomed through the living room. "Laura, look at you, lounging around. No wonder this house is always a mess. And don't even get me started on your cooking." I bit back the retort that sprang to my lips. "Frank, I'm not lounging. I've just returned from work. And I do cook, whenever I can." Frank snorted, his disdain evident. "Work? That's your excuse for everything, isn't it? A real woman knows her priorities. Keeping a home, taking care of her husband, that's what matters. Not some job." The sting of his words was sharp, but what came next cut even deeper. "And another thing, a woman's worth is also measured by her ability to bear children. It's been long enough, Laura. Where are the grandchildren?" The accusation hung heavy in the air, a cruel reminder of our struggles. "Frank, that's a low blow. You know it's not that simple. We're trying." But Frank was relentless. "Trying? Maybe you're not trying hard enough. Maybe you're too focused on your career to give my son the family he deserves." Marge, ever the ally in criticism, chimed in. "He's right, Laura. You need to get your priorities straight. This family needs more than just a paycheck from you." Jake, caught in the middle of this familial storm, seemed torn. His loyalty to his parents was strong, but the injustice of their words was not lost on him. "Mom, Dad, that's enough. Laura is my wife, and she deserves your respect, not this persecution," he said, his voice firm but weary. But Marge and Frank were unmoved. "Respect? She hasn't earned it." "Not by a long shot," Marge replied, her eyes cold and unforgiving. Life in Marge's house was suffocating, each day a test of my endurance. I thought I had reached my limit, but the day Jake's sister, Lisa, came back was the day my world turned upside down. I was tidying up the living room when Marge walked in with a sense of purpose I hadn't seen before. "Laura, we need to talk. Lisa's moving back in, and she'll need your room. It's the best in the house, after all." I stood there, dumbfounded. "My room? Marge, Jake and I live there. We've made it our space. Lisa can't just take it." Marge's eyes were steely, her voice cold. "This is my house, Laura. I decide who stays where. And Lisa, she needs that room. You and Jake can move into the smaller one." The unfairness of her demand struck a chord deep within me. Move into the smaller room? Marge, we're not boarders to be shuffled around. We're family, or have you forgotten? Marge shook her head, unmoved by my plea. "Family helps each other, Laura. And right now, you need to help by giving up your room. It's not a discussion." Lisa walked in then, her eyes scanning the room like she already owned it. "What's the problem, Laura? Can't handle a little change?" "My mom's right, I need that room." The room felt too small, the walls closing in. I looked at Marge, then at Lisa, the reality of the situation sinking in. "You want me to just step aside, to give up my space without a word? That's not going to happen." Marge's expression hardened. "It's happening, Laura. And if you don't like it, maybe it's time you found a new place to live." The words hit me like a physical blow. Jake was away, unreachable, and here I was, being cast aside like an unwanted guest. I took a deep breath, my decision clear. "Fine, Marge. If that's how you want it, I'll leave. But remember, this is your doing. You're pushing me out." I went to our room, my room, and started packing. Each item I placed in the box was a memory, a piece of a life that was being torn away. As I dragged my suitcase out, Marge and Lisa watched, their faces a mixture of victory and disdain. "Goodbye, Laura. I hope you find what you're looking for." Marge said, her voice devoid of warmth. I walked out the door, the weight of the suitcase, nothing compared to the weight in my heart. The bitterness of the escape was overwhelming, but it was also a release, a chance to breathe, to find myself again. As I hailed a cab and gave the driver my destination, I realized that this wasn't just an escape. It was a journey to reclaim my life, my dignity, my identity. And as the cab pulled away, leaving Marge's house behind, I knew that the road ahead might be tough, but I was tougher. Finding myself in a new house, the fresh start I desperately needed felt both exhilarating and daunting. The house was modest, but it was mine, a sanctuary from the relentless storm I had endured. As I unpacked, my phone buzzed. It was Jake, finally back from his trip. "Laura, what happened? Mom said you left. Talk to me." Jake's voice was laced with worry and confusion. I took a deep breath, the events of the past few days flooding back. "Jake, I couldn't take it anymore. Your mom, your sister, the constant criticism. It was too much. They wanted me out, so I left." There was a pause, the weight of my words hanging between us. "Left? Laura, I can't believe this. I'm so sorry." "I had no idea it was this bad," Jake replied, his voice heavy with guilt. I could feel the tears welling up, but I fought them back. "It's not your fault, Jake. But I had to leave. For my sanity. I couldn't live like that, constantly being put down, pushed aside." Jake's voice hardened, a rare edge of anger creeping in. "I'll talk to them, Laura. This isn't right. You're my wife, and they had no right to treat you that way." But the conversation took an unexpected turn when Marge called a few days later, her tone accusatory and sharp. "Laura, why did the movers take the appliances? That's Jake's money you're spending." I held the phone away for a moment, gathering my thoughts. "Marge, those appliances were bought with my money, my salary. And since I was kicked out, I took them with me. They're mine." There was a stunned silence on the other end. "Your money? But those are for the house, for the family," Marge protested, her voice rising. I couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication. "The family that kicked me out? No, Marge. I'm done. I'm starting over, and those appliances, they're a part of my new life. One that doesn't include constant disrespect and ungratefulness." The call ended with a click, the finality of it echoing in the empty room. It had been a few tranquil weeks since Jake and I moved into our new house, a place we could truly call our own. We set up our furniture and installed the appliances I had taken from Marge's house, marking the beginning of our new life together. But the peace was short-lived, shattered by a frantic call from Marge that I never expected to receive. "Laura, Jake, you have to come back. Frank's sick again, in the hospital. And Lisa, she's pregnant and alone. We're drowning here without you," Marge pleaded, her voice cracking with desperation. I exchanged a glance with Jake, feeling the weight of her words. But the scars of the past were still fresh, and my resolve was firm. "Marge, we're sorry to hear that, but we can't come back. We've started a new chapter, and we intend to keep it that way." Marge's desperation turned to frustration. "But what about family? You can't just abandon us in our time of need." I took a deep breath, the decision clear in my mind. "Marge, family doesn't use each other. Family doesn't make you feel unwelcome in your own home. We helped as much as we could, but now it's time for you to find a solution. Maybe it's time for you to get a job." The silence on the other end spoke volumes. Marge was clearly stunned by my response. "A job? At my age? With Frank sick and Lisa expecting? How can you be so heartless?" The accusation stung, but I knew we were making the right choice. "It's not heartlessness, Marge. It's about setting boundaries. It's about respect and understanding, something we never got while we were living with you. You're going to have to manage, just like we did. Jake, who had been quietly supporting me, finally spoke up. Mom, Laura's right. We've got our own lives to live. We can't be your safety net forever. It's time for you to take responsibility. The conversation ended with a click, the finality of it echoing through our new home. In the following days, more calls came, each more pleading than the last. But our decision was unwavering. We had endured enough, and it was time for us to focus on our future, free from the chains of guilt and manipulation. Walking into the high school reunion felt like stepping into a time machine. I'm Anna, just a regular 32-year-old financial analyst, nothing fancy about me. As I mingled, the air was thick with nostalgia. Laughter and chatter filled the room, everyone slipping back into their teenage selves like it was just yesterday we were all here. I caught up with a few classmates, sharing stories about our lives after school. The usual stuff: jobs, families, the whole shebang. That's when I noticed Jake, standing alone by the punch bowl, looking like someone had just run over his dog. I remembered him as the quiet guy from math class, always kept to himself. Curious, I nudged Lily, my old pal and the local chatterbox. Hey, what's up with Jake? I asked, nodding towards him. Oh, girl, you won't believe it. His crazy ex just dumped him. Again. It's been a whole soap opera with those two. Drama, fights in public, you name it. This time, it's supposedly over for good, Lily replied, her eyes wide with excitement. Feeling a bit sorry for the guy, I excused myself from the group and made my way over to Jake. Hey, Jake. Long time, huh? I started, trying to sound casual. He looked up, a bit startled. Oh, hey, Anna. Yeah, it's been ages. You look good, he stammered, managing a weak smile. Thanks. You okay? I asked, nodding towards the far end of the room where people were whispering and stealing glances at him. He let out a heavy sigh. Yeah, just the usual drama with my ex. It's over now, for real this time. I'm just tired of all the yelling and scenes, you know? I nodded, understanding more than I wanted to. I get it. Peace and quiet seem like a luxury sometimes, I said. Jake chuckled. You're telling me? It's been a roller coaster. I'm just looking for some normalcy, you know? No more emotional earthquakes every other day. We both laughed, the ice between us breaking a little. The conversation flowed more freely after that. We talked about our jobs, our families, and how life turned out so differently from what we had planned back in high school. As the night wore on, the reunion buzz faded into a comfortable hum. I found myself enjoying Jake's company more than I expected. He was different from the quiet kid I vaguely remembered. There was a depth to him, a certain calmness, despite the recent storm in his life. Listen, Anna, I don't mean to be forward, but would you like to grab coffee sometime? It's been really nice catching up, Jake asked, a hint of nervousness in his voice. I smiled, surprised by the sudden flutter in my stomach. Yeah, I'd like that. It's been nice talking to you too, Jake. Jake and I met up at a cozy little cafe downtown. It was one of those places with mismatched furniture and an endless supply of caffeine. We settled into a corner, coffee in hand, and picked up right where we left off. You know, I didn't expect to have such a good time at the reunion, Jake started, stirring his coffee absent-mindedly. Me neither, I admitted, smiling over my mug. Especially not the part where I'd end up sitting here with you. Jake laughed, and it was a sound that made me feel unexpectedly at ease. Life's weird like that. One minute you're minding your own business, the next you're getting coffee with someone you barely spoke 2 words to in high school. Yeah, and now look at us, talking like old friends, I said, feeling a warmth in my chest that had nothing to do with the coffee. We talked for hours, about everything and nothing. work, family, the latest TV shows we were hooked on. It was easy, comfortable. And before we knew it, the cafe was closing. Time flies, huh? Jake said as we stood up to leave. Like a jet, I replied, pulling on my jacket. Thanks for the coffee and the company, Jake. It was nice. Nice? He raised an eyebrow, a playful smirk on his face. Just nice? I laughed, rolling my eyes. Okay, more than nice. It was great. Happy now? Ecstatic, he said, his smile reaching his eyes. So, Anna, would you be up for doing this again? Maybe dinner next time? I didn't even hesitate. I'd like that, Jake. A lot. And that's how it started. Dinner turned into movie nights, which turned into weekend getaways. Before I knew it, I was head over heels for the guy I barely knew in high school. He was kind, funny, and had this way of making me feel like I was the only person in the room. One evening, we were walking along the river, the city lights reflecting off the water. It was one of those perfect moments, and Jake stopped, turning to face me. How about we make this official then? Anna, will you be my wife? I didn't even have to think. Yes, Jake. I'd love that. It was fast, sure, but it felt right. Like everything in my life was leading up to this point. The next few months were a blur of happiness. I was in love, and it felt like nothing could touch us. You'd think after the whirlwind that was Jake and me getting together, we'd be set for a smooth ride. Well, think again. After the honeymoon phase started to fade, things got complicated. One evening, Jake came home late from work for the third time that week. I was sitting at the kitchen table, the remains of dinner I'd made cooling off in front of me. Late again, huh? I said as he walked in, trying to keep my voice light. Yeah, work's been a nightmare. Deadlines, meetings, you know how it is, Jake replied, not meeting my eyes as he grabbed a beer from the fridge. I sighed. I get that, Jake, but this is becoming a regular thing. I miss spending time with you. He took a swig of his beer and shrugged. What can I say, Anna? I gotta do what I gotta do. You want a roof over our heads, right? I bit my lip, feeling a sting of frustration. It's not about that, Jake. It feels like you're avoiding me. We used to have fun, remember? Now you're always tired or busy. Jake let out a short laugh, but there was no humor in it. Fun? What do you want to do, Anna? Sit around and watch TV all night. Come on, we're not kids anymore. His words felt like a slap. So what, you're saying I'm boring now? He didn't answer right away, just took another sip of his beer. I'm saying we're adults, Anna. We can't just drop everything and have fun all the time. Life's not like that. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This wasn't the Jake I fell in love with. I know that, Jake. But it's like you don't even want to try anymore. Remember when we used to plan date nights? Now it's like pulling teeth to get you to spend an hour with me. Jake set his beer down with a sigh. Look, Anna, I'm sorry, okay? I didn't mean to make you feel that way. It's just, everything's so hectic right now. I wanted to believe him, I really did. But something in my gut told me it wasn't just about work. We went to bed that night with a wall of silence between us. The next few weeks were a roller coaster. One day Jake would be the loving guy I knew, the next he was distant and cold. It was like living with two different people. Life's got a funny way of tossing curveballs just when you think you've got the game figured out. One Tuesday evening, Jake walked through the door looking like he'd gone 10 rounds with a wildcat. His face was scratched up, clothes a mess. My heart skipped a beat, part worry, part something darker, suspicion maybe. Jake, what the hell happened to you? I blurted out, rushing over to him. He flinched, avoiding my eyes. It's nothing, Anna. Just had a little run-in on the street. I frowned, my mind racing. A run-in? With what, a set of claws? Who did this to you, Jake? He sighed, a tired, worn-out sound. I told you, it's nothing. Some crazy lady thought I was someone else, got all up in my face. It was nothing. I wasn't buying it. This wasn't just some random street altercation. The scratches were too deliberate, too personal. Jake, this doesn't look like nothing. This looks serious. Why won't you tell me the truth? He shrugged, the gesture too casual, too rehearsed. What do you want me to say, Anna? You want a better story? I don't have one. It was just a misunderstanding, that's all. Misunderstanding, my foot. I could feel the anger bubbling up, a mix of worry, frustration, and outright fear. So, some crazy lady just decides to scratch your face off, and you think it's not a big deal? Jake, look at me. This isn't normal. We need to do something about it. Jake finally looked at me, his eyes cold, distant. What do you want to do, Anna? Call the cops over a few scratches? It's over, it's done with. Let's just forget it happened, okay? But I couldn't let it go, not this time. Forget it? Jake, I can't just turn a blind eye. Something's not right. This isn't you. Talk to me, please. What's really going on? He didn't answer, just walked past me to the kitchen, his shoulders slumped, the weight of 1,000 unsaid words hanging between us. I followed, my mind racing, trying to piece together the puzzle that my life with Jake had become. Jake, please. I pleaded, my voice softer now. This isn't just about the scratches. It's about us, about how you've been acting. I'm worried about you, about us. He paused, a bottle of beer in his hand, and let out a long, deep breath. I know, Anna. I know things haven't been great. I'm sorry, okay? I'm just dealing with a lot right now. Just when you think you've got your life on track, it throws you off with a twist. This chapter of my life starts in the least glamorous place, a hospital bed. The pain hit me out of nowhere, like a truck. 1 minute I was at my desk crunching numbers, the next I was doubled over, clutching my stomach in agony. Fast forward through the blur of an ambulance ride, and there I was, hooked up to IVs, with a white-coated doctor telling me it's all stress-induced. I reached for my phone, shaky fingers dialing Jake's number. He needed to know, he needed to be here. The phone rang, and just when I thought I'd go to voicemail, he picked up. Jake, it's me. I'm in the hospital. Something's wrong with my stomach, they're saying it's stress or something. I need you, I said, trying to keep the panic at bay. There was a pause, a beat too long, and then Jake's voice, strangely distant. Anna, look, I can't. I'm on my way to the airport. Urgent business trip, it came out of nowhere. My heart sank. Business trip? Now? Jake, did you even hear what I said? I'm in the hospital. Our anniversary is in a few days. You can't just leave. I don't have a choice, Anna. It's my job, he said, his voice flat, as if we were discussing some trivial inconvenience, not a crisis. But I started, but he cut me off. I gotta go, Anna. I'll call you when I can. And with that, he hung up. I was stunned, disbelief and pain swirling into a nasty cocktail. It felt unreal, lying there alone, my husband off on a sudden business trip, while I was grappling with pain that apparently was all in my head. When the shock wore off, anger took its place. I needed answers. I picked up the phone again, this time calling Jake's office. His boss answered, confusion clear in his voice. Business trip? No, there's no business trip. Jake took a 2-week leave, said it was personal. The room spun. Personal leave. no business trip. I was suddenly very aware of the cold, sterile hospital room around me, the beeping of machines, the distant chatter of nurses. It felt like I was in a bubble, watching my life crumble from the inside. I hung up and called Lily, my trusty source for all things gossip. Maybe she knew something, anything, that could make sense of this mess. Lily, it's Anna. I need to know, have you heard anything about Jake recently? There was a pause, then Lily's voice, cautious. Anna, are you sure you want to know? Just tell me, Lily. Okay, but brace yourself. Word is, Jake's been seen around town with his ex. You know, the crazy one. They're saying he's back with her. I couldn't breathe. It was like every fear, every doubt I'd ever had about Jake and his mysterious behavior came crashing down on me all at once. The late nights, the scratches, the sudden business trip. It all made a horrible kind of sense. Anna? Are you there? Are you okay? Lily's voice broke through my thoughts. No, Lily, I'm not okay. I'm far from okay. But thanks for telling me. I hung up, the weight of betrayal heavy on my chest. Lying in that hospital bed, I realized that the life I thought I had, the marriage I believed in, it was all a lie. And I was the last to know. The pain in my stomach was nothing compared to the ache in my heart. After the bombshells that had been dropping in my life, I was starting to feel like a war-zone survivor. I still stuck in this hospital bed, but now the pain in my gut was the least of my worries. The betrayal, the lies, Jake's disappearing act, it all swirled in my head like a bad storm. I was just about to attempt some crappy hospital food when my phone rang. Jake's name flashed on the screen. My heart skipped, not sure if it was fear, anger, or just plain curiosity. I answered, my voice colder than I intended. Jake, what do you want? Anna, thank God. Listen, I'm in a mess. I need your help, he blurted out, panic clear in his voice. My eyebrows shot up. Help? Now you need my help? Where are you, Jake? And don't feed me any more lies. There was a pause, a shuffling sound, then, I'm not where I said I'd be. I'm out of the country. With her. The honesty hit me like a slap. At least he wasn't lying this time. Go on, I said, my voice steady, my grip on the phone tight. We came to this resort, thought we could sort things out. But it went bad, Anna, real bad. We got into a fight, and now we're in trouble with the local police. They've thrown us in a cell, and it's bad here, Anna, real bad. I almost laughed. Almost. The sheer audacity of the man was almost comical. So let me get this straight. You ditch your wife in the hospital, run off with your ex, to some exotic location, and now you're in jail, calling me for help? Anna, please. I know I messed up, but this is serious. They're talking about fines, jail time, lawyers. I don't know what to do. His voice cracked, and for a moment, just a moment, I felt a pang of the old affection. But it passed, leaving a bitter taste in my mouth. Jake, you made your bed. Now you get to lie in it. With her, I said, each word sharp and clear. I hung up before he could say another word. But I wasn't done yet. I had one more call to make. I dialed Jake's parents, the words pouring out before they could even say hello. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, it's Anna. I'm sorry to call like this, but there's something you need to know about Jake. Their shock was evident, their voices a mix of disbelief and horror as I laid it all out, the affair, the betrayal, and now the desperate call from some foreign jail. This is unbelievable. Our Jake, doing something like this? And now he's in trouble? Mr. Smith's voice was a low rumble, a storm brewing. Mrs. Smith was quick to add, he's always been impulsive, but this? This is too much. We can't condone this behavior. He needs to learn, and if that means facing the consequences, then so be it. I hung up, the weight of the conversation heavy on my shoulders, but my resolve unshaken. Jake had made his choices, and now, he had to face the music, alone. I was done being the safety net, the fallback plan. Fresh out of the hospital, I was just settling into the quiet of my own place when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, certainly not Jake. But there he was, standing on my doorstep, looking like he'd been dragged through hell and back. "Anna," Jake said, his voice barely above a whisper. I need to talk to you." I raised an eyebrow, my arms crossed. "Really? Now you need to talk? What's up, Jake? Cat got your tongue?" He stepped inside, looking around the place like it was foreign land. "I'm in deep trouble, Anna. You know that. I need your help." I couldn't help but let out a laugh, harsh and biting. "Help? You've got some nerve, showing up here and asking for help after everything. You look awful, by the way." Jake's face fell, the weight of his actions written all over him. I know I messed up. But being locked up in that place, it was hell, Anna. And it's your fault. You left me there to rot." My laughter died, replaced by a cold, hard stare. "My fault? You cheat, you lie, and somehow it's my fault? You're delusional, Jake." He took a step back, as if my words were physical blows. "But, Anna, I thought we were in this together. I thought you'd have my back." I shook my head, disbelief and anger swirling inside me. "Together? That ship sailed the moment you decided to run off with her. And now you want my support? You're out of your mind." Jake's face went pale, his eyes darting around the room, looking for some kind of escape. "Anna, please. I'm begging you. I don't have anyone else." I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of power and resolve I hadn't felt in a long time. "No, Jake. It's over. I'm filing for divorce. And you bet I'll be asking for compensation for your little escapade." The color drained from his face, his eyes wide with panic. "Divorce? Compensation? But, Anna, you can't do that. You don't have any proof." I couldn't help but smile, a cold, hard smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Oh, but I do, Jake. See, while you were off playing lovebirds in paradise, I was busy. My lawyer has been in touch with the police. They were quite helpful, provided all the evidence we needed, including your own testimony and hers." Jake staggered, as if the words were physical blows knocking the wind out of him. You did that?" I nodded, my resolve steeling. "Yes, Jake. I did. And now, you're going to face the consequences. It's time you learned that actions have consequences. And it's time I took my life back." He looked at me, a mix of fear, regret, and something else, something like realization, dawning in his eyes. "Anna, I never meant for any of this to happen. But it was too late for apologies, too late for regrets." I watched as he turned and left, the door closing softly behind him. I stood there, in the quiet of my living room, feeling the weight of the past lift off my shoulders. The divorce papers were signed, sealed, and delivered, and with them, a hefty compensation for all the hell he dragged me through. One morning, as I sipped my coffee in the quiet of my now truly mine apartment, my phone buzzed. It was Lily, the ever-present pulse of the town's heartbeat. "Hey, Anna, how's the new life treating you?" she asked, her voice buzzing with the latest gossip. I leaned back, a smile spreading across my face. "Couldn't be better, Lily. The divorce is final, and the compensation is, let's just say, satisfying." Lily's laughter rang through the phone. "I bet. Hey, did you hear about Jake and his darling? They're still at it, like cats and dogs. Police had to break them up the other night. It's all over town." I shook my head, the last strings of attachment to that part of my life dissolving. Not my circus, not my monkeys anymore, Lily. Let him deal with the mess he made. Speaking of messes, Lily continued, word is, his job's on the line. His little escapades haven't gone unnoticed. Even his folks are keeping their distance. Karma's a real thing, huh? I took another sip of my coffee, the taste of freedom sweet on my tongue. Seems like it, Lily. But that's his journey to walk. I've got my own path to tread. We chatted for a while, Lily filling me in on the town's latest, me sharing plans of rebuilding my life, my way. After we hung up, I sat there, the morning sun casting a warm glow over the room. As for Jake, the rumors kept coming. Fights, police visits, job troubles. I heard it all, but it didn't sting anymore. It was like watching a distant storm, knowing you're safe and warm indoors. My life was my own now, a blank canvas waiting for new colors, new stories. And as for Jake, well, he was just a faded picture in the gallery of my past, a lesson learned, a stepping stone to the strong, resilient person I had become. My name is Emma, a 28-year-old with a deep-rooted passion for antiquity and history, which I channel through my work as an antique dealer. My world was usually quiet, filled with the gentle rustle of pages and the soft clinks of ancient artifacts. That world expanded beautifully when I met Alex. He was a kindred spirit, someone who shared my love for the relics of the past. Our relationship blossomed quickly, woven together by shared interests and long, engaging conversations. One sunny afternoon, Alex, with a nervous smile, suggested it was time for me to meet his family. I remember feeling a flutter in my stomach, a mix of excitement and anxiety. I wanted to make a good impression, to show them the woman who had captured their son's heart. The day arrived, and I chose my outfit carefully, a vintage blue dress that complemented my eyes, hoping it would be a conversation starter about my love for all things historic. As we drove to his mother's house, Alex reassured me, they're going to love you, just be yourself. The Harper family home was an old structure, its walls echoing with a sense of tradition and formality. I was introduced to Alex's family, his mother, Mrs. Harper, a woman with a commanding presence, his brothers, Ethan and Liam, and their wives, Chloe and Hannah. Dinner was served in a room that looked like something out of a period drama, with family portraits adorning the walls. As we sat down, Mrs. Harper, with a scrutinizing look, turned the conversation towards me. So, Emma, Alex tells us you're in the antique business. How quaint. What exactly do you do? Mrs. Harper asked, her tone polite but edged with something I couldn't place. I smiled, eager to share my passion. Yes, I work in a family-owned antique shop. It's fascinating, really. We help preserve history, find homes for objects that have been part of someone's life. Mrs. Harper let out a loud laugh, one that didn't quite reach her eyes. Preserving history, eh? Sounds to me more like you're a glorified junk dealer. The room fell into an awkward silence. Chloe and Hannah giggled subtly. I felt a flush of embarrassment creep up my cheeks. Alex, sitting beside me, stiffened. Mom, Emma's work is important. She has a deep knowledge of history and art. Mrs. Harper waved her hand dismissively. Oh, relax, Alex. I'm just making conversation. The dinner continued, with Mrs. Harper steering the conversation, often ignoring my attempts to join in. I felt like an outsider, struggling to find my place in this unfamiliar world. After dinner, while Alex was in another room, I found myself alone with Chloe and Hannah. So, Emma, must be interesting, surrounded by all that old stuff, Chloe said, her voice dripping with something I couldn't quite identify as sincerity or sarcasm. Yes, it's quite fulfilling, I replied, trying to keep the conversation light. Every piece has its own story. Hannah smirked, well, I suppose someone has to do it. I prefer the modern and new, personally. Their thinly veiled condescension hung in the air, making the rest of the evening even more uncomfortable. That night, as I lay in bed, the echoes of the evening played in my mind. The laughter, the looks, the comments, they all pointed to a future where I might never quite fit in. It was the start of a journey I hadn't anticipated, one that would challenge my love for Alex and test my resolve in ways I never imagined. The day of our wedding was a whirlwind of emotions. Despite the initial discomfort with Alex's family, I held on to the hope that our wedding day would be different, a celebration of our love and union. I had chosen a classic, elegant gown, hoping to impress Mrs. Harper and maybe, just maybe, bridge the gap between us. As I walked down the aisle, my heart fluttered, not just with nerves about the lifelong commitment but also about fitting into Alex's family. The ceremony was beautiful, filled with laughter and tears, but it was the reception that brought my anxieties to the forefront. During the reception, as Alex and I mingled with guests, I noticed Mrs. Harper huddled with Chloe and Hannah, their heads close together, whispering. I tried to shake off the uneasy feeling, focusing instead on the joyous occasion. Later, as we sat at the head table, Mrs. Harper raised her glass for a toast. To Alex and Emma, may your life be as beautiful and unique as the antiques you cherish. The crowd laughed warmly, and I forced a smile, but Mrs. Harper's eyes held a glimmer of something else. After the toast, she leaned over to me, her voice low but clear. You do look lovely, Emma. Though I must say, Chloe and Hannah's dresses at their weddings were quite the talk of the town. Unique, just like them. I felt my smile falter, her words stinging more than I cared to admit. Thank you, Mrs. Harper. I'm glad you think I look nice today. She nodded, her eyes scanning the room. Of course, dear. It's important to keep up appearances, isn't it? Especially in a family like ours. The rest of the evening, I couldn't shake her words. They lingered in my mind, a reminder that I was being constantly compared and evaluated. As the night drew to a close, and guests started to leave, Alex noticed my subdued mood. What's wrong, Emma? You seem a bit off. I hesitated, not wanting to spoil our special day. It's nothing, just tired, I guess. He wrapped his arm around me. It's been a long day, but a wonderful one. Don't let anything spoil it, okay? I nodded, trying to push Mrs. Harper's comments to the back of my mind. But deep down, I knew this was just the beginning of a series of comparisons and subtle jabs. Life as Alex's wife was becoming increasingly challenging, especially with his mother, Mrs. Harper. She had a way of making me feel small and insignificant, a feeling that grew with every passing week. The most challenging part was the unannounced visits she started making to our apartment. One afternoon, while I was sorting through some antique jewelry for the shop, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Mrs. Harper standing there, an uninvited guest with a knack for finding faults. Emma, dear, I thought I'd drop by. I was in the neighborhood, she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. As she walked around our living room, her eyes scanned every corner, every piece of furniture. You know, cleanliness is next to godliness, she remarked, running her finger along the mantelpiece and inspecting it for dust. I felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment. I do my best to keep the house clean, Mrs. Harper. She said softly. It's just that Chloe and Hannah, they keep their homes immaculate. Perhaps you could learn a thing or two from them. Her words stung, and I struggled to maintain my composure. I'll keep that in mind, I managed to say, though her constant comparisons were wearing me down. Alex walked in just then, and his face lit up seeing his mother. Mom, what a pleasant surprise. Mrs. Harper smiled at him, the picture of affection. Just checking in on you too. Making sure you're living comfortably. I watched as Alex chatted with her, completely oblivious to the tension in the room. After a while, Mrs. Harper left, but her presence lingered like a dark cloud. Later that evening, I decided to talk to Alex about it. Alex, your mother's visits and comments are really getting to me. It feels like she's always judging me, comparing me to Chloe and Hannah. Alex looked surprised. Really? I thought she was just being her usual self. She means well, Emma. His dismissive response frustrated me. It's not just harmless, Alex. It's constant criticism. It makes me feel like I'm not good enough. He sighed, a look of confusion on his face. I guess I've never noticed it. That's just how Mom is. She criticizes everyone. Don't take it personally. The unannounced visits continued, each one leaving me feeling more drained than the last. My confidence began to wane, and I found myself questioning my worth, my abilities, even my marriage. One particular visit from Mrs. Harper left me reeling. She had walked into our kitchen, inspecting it with a critical eye. "Oh, Emma, these countertops are a mess. And look at this, are these last night's dishes?" I always taught my boys to marry women who could keep a tidy home. Her words cut deep, and I struggled to find a response. "I've been busy with work, Mrs. Harper. I haven't had a chance to clean up yet." She shook her head, her expression one of disappointment. "You should manage your time better, dear. A clean home is a happy home, after all." As she left, I felt a sense of defeat wash over me. It seemed no matter what I did, it would never be enough for Mrs. Harper. And with Alex's indifference to the situation, I felt increasingly isolated and misunderstood. The festive season was supposed to be a time of joy and celebration, but for me, it was tinged with anxiety. Mrs. Harper's announcement that we would all be celebrating Christmas at her house, with a specific instruction for each daughter-in-law to bring a dish, filled me with dread. Alex, ever eager to please his mother, had his own expectations. "Emma, you should make your beef Wellington. It's always a hit. We need to impress Mom this year," Alex said a few days before Christmas, his tone hinting at the importance he placed on his mother's opinion. I nodded, feeling the pressure. "Sure, I'll do my best." On Christmas Day, I carefully prepared the dish, putting extra effort into ensuring it was perfect. Arriving at Mrs. Harper's house, the atmosphere was festive, with decorations adorning every corner. Chloe and Hannah had already arrived, their dishes on display. As dinner commenced, Mrs. Harper began her ritual of tasting and commenting on each dish. "Chloe, this casserole is delightful, just like the one you made last year. And Hannah, this salad is so fresh and vibrant. You always know how to bring a healthy option to the table." Both Chloe and Hannah beamed under her praise, while I nervously awaited my turn. Finally, Mrs. Harper reached for a slice of my beef Wellington. The room fell silent as she chewed thoughtfully. Then she made a face, pushing the plate away. "This is bland, completely tasteless. Honestly, Emma, if you can't cook, you shouldn't bother trying." The room erupted in quiet giggles from Chloe and Hannah. I felt my face flush with embarrassment and hurt. Alex, who was seated next to me, said nothing, his eyes fixed on his plate. I tried to defend myself. "I'm sorry you didn't like it, Mrs. Harper. I followed the recipe exactly." Mrs. Harper waved her hand dismissively. "Well, next time leave the cooking to those who know how. This dish is more suited for the trash than a Christmas dinner." The rest of the evening passed in a blur. I felt small and humiliated, my confidence shattered. Alex's lack of support only added to my sense of isolation. Later that night, back at our apartment, I confronted Alex. "Why didn't you say anything when your mother insulted my cooking? You saw how upset I was." Alex sighed, a look of frustration crossing his face. "Emma, that's just how Mom is. She doesn't mean any harm. You're taking this too seriously." "Too seriously? Alex, she humiliated me in front of everyone. And you just sat there?" I replied, my voice rising with emotion. Alex shook his head, his response a mix of indifference and annoyance. You need to learn to let these things go. It's not worth getting upset over. But it was worth it to me. It was about respect, about being valued and supported, especially by the person who was supposed to be my partner. The tension that had been building up over the past few months seemed to culminate as Mrs. Harper's birthday approached. Alex, ever keen to stay in his mother's good graces, insisted that we needed to outdo his brothers with our gift. "Emma, this is important to Mom. We need to give her something that stands out, something that shows we care more," Alex said one evening as we discussed gift ideas. Reluctantly, I suggested an antique vase from our shop. It was exquisite, with a rich history that I thought would appeal to Mrs. Harper's taste. "It's beautiful and unique, just like her," I said, trying to sound enthusiastic. Alex scrutinized the vase, his expression uncertain. "All right, but remember, how Mom reacts is on you." His words stung, but I brushed them aside, hoping the vase would somehow bridge the gap between Mrs. Harper and me. On the day of the birthday celebration, we arrived at Mrs. Harper's house, the vase carefully wrapped. The atmosphere was lively, with family members exchanging pleasantries. Chloe and Hannah had already presented their gifts, both receiving warm approval from Mrs. Harper. Finally, it was our turn. I unwrapped the vase, presenting it to Mrs. Harper with a hopeful smile. "Happy birthday, Mrs. Harper. We thought this would be a perfect addition to your collection." Mrs. Harper's expression changed from anticipation to disbelief as she examined the vase. "This? You think this old piece of glass is a suitable gift?" Her voice was laced with contempt. I felt my heart sink. "It's an antique, Mrs. Harper. It has a lot of historical value." But before I could say more, Mrs. Harper's anger boiled over. With a look of disgust, she hurled the vase to the ground, shattering it into countless pieces. "I don't want this junk in my house. This is an insult." The room fell silent. I stood frozen, unable to believe what had just happened. Alex, who had been standing next to me, turned and said in a low voice, "You should leave, Emma. You've upset my mother enough." His words were like a final blow, stripping away any remaining hope I had of fitting into his family. Without a word, I turned and walked out of the house, the sound of the shattered vase echoing in my ears. Back at our apartment, I packed a few essentials, my mind racing with the events of the evening. I left the divorce papers on the kitchen table, a silent message to Alex that I could no longer endure this life. Later, when Alex called, his tone was incredulous. "Emma, you can't be serious. This is just a misunderstanding." But my decision was firm. "No, Alex. It's not a misunderstanding. It's the reality of how your family treats me, and how you let them. I can't live like this." Leaving Alex and the life I had tried to build with him was one of the hardest decisions I had ever made. But after the debacle at Mrs. Harper's birthday, I knew it was the only choice I had if I wanted to preserve my dignity and self-worth. I hadn't even finished unpacking in my new apartment when my phone rang. It was Mrs. Harper. "Emma, you never were a good match for my Alex. Just a junk dealer with no taste and no respect for your elders," she sneered as soon as I answered. I held the phone away from my ear, her harsh words echoing in my quiet living room. "Mrs. Harper, I think it's best if we don't speak to each other." I tried to keep my voice calm. She scoffed. "You could have learned a thing or two from Chloe and Hannah. They are the ideal wives for my sons. They understand family values." I hung up the phone, her words leaving a bitter taste in my mouth. The call was a painful reminder of why leaving was the right decision. But what I didn't expect was running into Chloe and Hannah just a few days later at a local coffee shop. "Oh, look, it's Emma. How's the junk business?" Chloe taunted as they approached my table. Hannah chimed in with a sly smile. "We heard about the divorce. You know, you just had to play the game. Make Mrs. Harper happy, laugh at her jokes. It's not that hard. Their words stung, but I was no longer the woman who would take this silently. I'm not like you two. I don't giggle and fawn over someone for personal gain. I have my integrity. Chloe laughed mockingly. Integrity won't get you a nice inheritance. Hannah nodded in agreement. Exactly. It's all about playing smart, Emma. You just didn't get it. I looked at them, two women who had surrendered their self-respect for material gains. Enjoy your game then. I prefer to live a life where I don't have to lose myself for someone else's wealth. I left the coffee shop with a newfound sense of clarity. Their candid admission was shocking, but not surprising. It reaffirmed my belief that I had made the right decision. Though the road ahead was uncertain and possibly challenging, I knew that I had chosen a path that upheld my values and respect for myself. Months had passed since I left Alex, and life had settled into a new, peaceful rhythm. I was at my antique shop, engrossed in restoring a vintage clock, when I overheard a couple of regular customers gossiping. Poor Mrs. Harper, all alone with her health failing. None of her family wants anything to do with her, one said. Yes, I heard she's been complaining that her sons and their wives have abandoned her, added the other. Their words stirred a mix of emotions in me, but pity wasn't one of them. The next day, as I was sifting through some old letters in the shop, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Mrs. Harper's number. Taking a deep breath, I answered. Emma, it's me, Mrs. Harper. I'm ill, very ill. No one is here to help me, not even my own sons. Her voice was weak, quivering with a blend of desperation and self-pity. I'm sorry to hear that, Mrs. Harper, but why are you calling me? I'm no longer part of your family, I replied, my tone neutral. But you were once. You're the only one I can turn to now. My sons, their wives, they don't care. They insult me, ignore me, she said, her voice cracking. I couldn't help but let out a short laugh. Mrs. Harper, do you remember how you treated me? How you insulted and belittled me at every turn? There was a pause on the other end, and then she said, but I'm family. You have a duty to help me. No, Mrs. Harper. I had a duty to your son, which ended when our marriage did, I responded, my patience wearing thin. And let's not forget the antique vase you smashed at your birthday. That vase was worth thousands. Thousands that you owe me, I added. There was a sharp intake of breath from her end. That vase? That was just an old piece of glass. That old piece of glass was a valuable antique. You owe me $5,000 for it, I said firmly. Mrs. Harper was silent for a moment, and then I heard her coughing. $5,000? I don't have that kind of money. That's not my problem, Mrs. Harper. You should have thought about that before you destroyed it, I replied. The call ended shortly after, with Mrs. Harper's pleas turning into bitter mumbles. I hung up the phone, feeling a mixture of relief and sadness. Mrs. Harper was reaping the consequences of her actions, alienated by her own family due to her harsh and critical nature. Life after my divorce from Alex had settled into a peaceful routine, centered around the antique shop, which had become my sanctuary. I was content in my little world of timeless treasures until one autumn day brought an unexpected twist. While enjoying a quiet cup of coffee at a local cafe, I overheard a conversation between two patrons. Poor Mrs. Harper, one said, her own children sent her to a nursing home against her will. Can you imagine? The irony of Mrs. Harper's situation wasn't lost on me. The woman who once wielded control over her family with sharp words and criticisms was now at the mercy of their decisions. A few days later, fate played its hand. As I walked down a bustling street, lost in thought about an upcoming auction, I bumped into someone. It was Alex. His face twisted into a look of contempt upon seeing me. Emma, the ungrateful, he sneered quietly, yet with venom in his voice. Taken aback by his bitterness, but not intimidated, I responded, ungrateful? That's a bit rich coming from you, Alex. What's that supposed to mean? He retorted, his voice rising. Realizing we were attracting attention, I decided it was time to set the record straight. Well, considering you and your brothers put your mother in a nursing home, refusing to care for her, you're hardly one to talk about gratitude. His face flushed with anger and embarrassment as passers-by began to take notice. That was a family decision. You have no right to judge. I have every right when you call me ungrateful, I shot back. Seems to me like you abandoned the woman who needed you most. Where's your gratitude and respect for her? Alex's expression faltered, a mix of shame and anger. He glanced around, noticing the curious and disapproving looks from the people around us. Without another word, he turned on his heel and hurried away, leaving me standing there, a mixture of relief and triumph washing over me. I continued my walk, the encounter leaving me with a sense of closure. The final chapter with Alex and his family had ended, not with a whimper, but with a revelation of their true colors. Later, as I sat in my cozy apartment, surrounded by relics of the past, I reflected on how much I had grown. The Emma who once sought approval and acceptance from Alex and his family was gone. In her place was a woman who knew her worth, who stood her ground, and who no longer tolerated disrespect. My name is Kylie, and at 28, I was deeply immersed in my career at a bustling company where I worked as an office employee. The swirl of relationships and romance was far from my busy life. But, as they say, life has its surprises. It was at a casual get-together with my friends where I first met Mike. He was a friend of a friend, and from the moment he entered, there was something about him that caught my attention. He was confident, almost too much, but it was his persistent attention towards me that was both flattering and a little overwhelming. "Hey, I'm Mike," he said, extending his hand with a smile that seemed practiced, but charming. "Kylie," I replied, shaking his hand. "Nice to meet you." As the evening went on, Mike made it a point to engage me in conversation. He was interesting, I'll give him that. But what really stood out was his persistence. "So, Kylie, would you like to go out for dinner sometime?" he asked, a glint of eagerness in his eyes. I hesitated, not used to such directness. "I'm not sure. I'm quite busy with work, you know." "Come on, it'll be fun. I promise I'm a great dinner companion," he persisted, his smile unwavering. After much persuasion, and admittedly a certain curiosity on my part, I agreed. That's how our courtship started. Mike was relentless in his pursuit. He'd show up with small gifts, send me good morning texts, and always made sure to check in on how my day was going. A few months into this whirlwind romance, he popped the question. It felt fast, but Mike's determination seemed genuine. "Kylie, I know this might seem quick, but I've never been sure about anything. Marry me?" he said one evening as we walked through the city park, the stars just beginning to twinkle in the dusk sky. I remember laughing, half in disbelief and half in excitement. "Mike, are you serious? We barely know each other." "I am serious, Kylie. I've never felt this way about anyone. You're the one for me," he replied, his eyes locked on mine. Maybe it was the romance of the moment or the way he looked at me, but I said yes. It was a decision that would lead me down a path I never expected. We got married a few months later and moved into the house he owned. We agreed to split everything equally, a decision that seemed fair and modern. The equilibrium of our marriage began to falter subtly after a significant advancement in my career. My promotion was a cause for celebration, but it unexpectedly steered our relationship into uncharted territory. One evening, as we relaxed in our living room, Mike broached a topic that would unknowingly mark the beginning of a fundamental shift in our dynamic. "Kylie, your promotion is fantastic news. But don't you think it's fair that you contribute more to our expenses now? You do earn more than me," he said, his tone casual yet firm. I paused, taken aback by his suggestion. More? We had agreed on equal contributions, Mike. I thought that was working well for us. He leaned back, exuding a confidence that bordered on arrogance. Times change, Kylie. It's only logical. You have a bigger paycheck, so you should bear a larger share of our expenses. I felt a knot of unease in my stomach. But Mike, our agreement was about equality and partnership. This feels like a departure from that. Come on, Kylie. It's just being practical. Why should we both stretch ourselves thin when you can comfortably cover more? He persisted, his gaze fixed on me. Reluctantly, after a brief and somewhat tense exchange, I acquiesced to his logic, despite feeling a creeping sense of injustice. All right, I'll contribute more, but let's try to keep other aspects of our partnership balanced. Of course, we will, Mike assured me quickly, too quickly, perhaps. In the months that followed, I watched as Mike's contributions to our joint expenses dwindled and then ceased entirely. It was a gradual shift, almost imperceptible at first, but it soon became starkly evident. I found myself solely responsible for groceries, bills, and loan repayments. Feeling both the burden and the unfairness of the situation, I decided to confront him one evening. Mike, you haven't been contributing to our expenses. We need to talk about this, I said, hoping to bring some sense of fairness back into our marriage. However, the conversation quickly soured. You're making a big deal out of nothing, Kylie. I'm going through a rough patch at work, Mike retorted dismissively. But we had an agreement, Mike. It's not just about money, it's about our commitment to share our life equally, I argued, trying to keep my voice level. His response was laced with annoyance and anger. You're being petty, Kylie. This is what marriage is about, supporting each other. You earn enough for both of us. The discussion ended with Mike storming out, leaving me alone with my thoughts and a growing sense of isolation. When he returned days later, he acted as if the disagreement had never happened. The imbalance in our relationship only deepened in the following months. I found myself not only contributing more financially but also taking on the lion's share of the household responsibilities. One evening, after a long day at work, I came home to find the living room in disarray and Mike lounging on the couch. The sight of dirty dishes in the sink and unsorted laundry was disheartening. Mike, the house is a mess. Can you help me clean up? I asked, setting down my bag and taking a weary look around. He glanced around indifferently and shrugged. Does it really matter? It's not that bad, just leave it for now. But we agreed to share these chores. It's not fair for me to do everything, I countered, feeling the weight of exhaustion and frustration. Mike sighed heavily, his response tinged with annoyance. Kylie, you're always making a big deal out of nothing. I had a busy day too, you know. I knew arguing would lead nowhere. Silently, I began tidying up, feeling a mix of anger and disappointment. This wasn't the partnership I had signed up for. The next blow came a few weeks later when Mike casually dropped another bombshell during dinner. Kylie, I'd been thinking. You're doing so well with your job and all, I decided to cut down my hours at work. I've switched to part-time. I almost choked on my food. Part-time? But why? We need 2 incomes, Mike. He shrugged, seemingly unconcerned. You're earning enough for both of us. Besides, I deserve some time to relax and pursue my hobbies. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Mike, that's not how it works. We have bills, a mortgage. We can't rely on just my income. Why not? You're doing great financially. I think it's only fair that I get to enjoy some leisure time, he said, taking another bite of his food as if we were discussing something trivial. I sat there, stunned. The imbalance had reached a new level. Not only was I contributing more financially and doing all the housework, but now I was also expected to be the primary breadwinner while he pursued leisure? It was too much. Feeling both defeated and outraged, I tried to reason with him one more time. Mike, this isn't fair to me. We're supposed to be partners, supporting each other, not one person carrying all the weight. Mike looked at me, his expression one of indifference. Kylie, you're just overreacting as usual. This is for the best. You'll see. But I didn't see. As the days turned into weeks and then months, I found myself working harder than ever, both at my job and at home. Mike's contributions had all but ceased. He spent his days pursuing hobbies or lounging around, while I struggled to keep everything afloat. For several weeks, I had been grappling with the new reality of our marriage. Mike's decision to work part-time, leaving the bulk of our financial responsibilities on my shoulders, was a hard pill to swallow. But what came next was even more disheartening and threw our relationship into further turmoil. It started with small inconsistencies in our finances that I couldn't quite place. Then one day, a colleague of Mike's casually mentioned seeing him at the local arcade, frequently playing slot machines. I was stunned. That evening, I confronted him. Mike, I heard you've been spending your afternoons at the arcade, playing slots. Is this where all your salary is going? I asked, the frustration evident in my voice. Mike, caught off guard, scoffed. So what if I play a few games? It's my money, and I can spend it how I like. But we're struggling to keep up with our expenses because of your part-time job. And now this? I couldn't hide my disbelief and anger. He rolled his eyes. Oh, come on, Kylie. It's just a bit of fun. I don't see why you're making such a big deal out of it. A big deal? Mike, this is serious. You're gambling away your earnings while I'm working overtime to make ends meet, I exclaimed, feeling a mix of anger and desperation. Mike's expression turned cold. I don't need a lecture from you. It's not like I'm blowing thousands. Just drop it, Kylie. But I couldn't just drop it. The next few days were tense, and then, following another argument about his gambling, Mike stormed out. He returned a few days later, drunk and unapologetic. Seeing him in such a state broke my heart, but it also strengthened my resolve to address the issue. Mike, this has to stop. I think you need help. There are therapists who specialize in gambling addiction. Please, let's consider it. I pleaded, hoping to reach out to him. His reaction was harsh and dismissive. Therapy? For what? I don't have a problem, Kylie. And I definitely don't need you trying to fix me. But Mike, I'm just worried about you, about us. We can't go on like this, I said, my voice tinged with worry. He sneered. Worried? No, you just want to control me, like everything else. I don't need your help or anyone else's. His words stung, and I realized that the man I once knew, the one I had built a life with, was slipping away, lost in a cycle of denial and destructive behavior. I stood there, watching him walk away from me, feeling a profound sense of helplessness and despair. The turmoil at home was only one part of my growing list of troubles. At work, things had taken a drastic turn for the worse with the arrival of a new boss, Mr. Henderson. His management style was authoritarian to the point of being despotic, a stark contrast to the supportive environment I had grown accustomed to. One particularly grueling day, Mr. Henderson called me into his office. The room felt cold and uninviting, much like his demeanor. Kylie, your performance lately has been subpar. I need you to step it up, he began, not even bothering with a greeting. I was taken aback. I'm sorry, Mr. Henderson, but I've been managing my tasks as best as I can under the circumstances. He leaned forward, his gaze sharp. Excuses won't cut it. I expect more from my team. You'll need to start working overtime to meet your targets. And remember, there are penalties for underperformance. The threat hung heavily in the air. I felt a surge of frustration and injustice. That seems a bit harsh. The workload has increased significantly, and I've been doing my best to keep up. Mr. Henderson's expression was unyielding. This is not a negotiation, Kylie. It's an expectation. If you can't meet it, perhaps this job isn't for you. I left his office feeling deflated and overwhelmed. The pressure at work was becoming unbearable, compounded by the stress I was facing at home with Mike. It felt like I was caught in a relentless storm, with no respite in sight. And then Mr. Thompson sat down at my desk. He was a regular client of our company, known for his amiable demeanor and understanding nature. Our interactions were always professional, yet cordial, making him one of the few bright spots in an otherwise stressful work environment. As we discussed the project details, he paused and looked at me with a concerned expression. "You look particularly tired today, Kylie. Is everything all right?" he asked, his tone genuine and kind. I hesitated for a moment, not used to such personal concern in the workplace. But something about his sincere approach made me open up. "It's just the workload and the environment here. It's been very challenging lately," I admitted, offering a weary smile. Mr. Thompson nodded understandingly. "You're a valuable asset to any team, Kylie. If you ever find that it's too much and decide to leave, I'd be more than happy to have someone of your caliber join my company. We value hard work, but we also believe in a healthy work-life balance," he said earnestly. That evening, as I stayed late to catch up on work, my colleague Jenna stopped by my desk. "Kylie, you look exhausted. This new regime is taking a toll on all of us." I sighed, rubbing my tired eyes. "I don't know how much longer I can keep this up, Jenna. The demands are unreasonable." Jenna nodded in agreement. "It's been brutal. Henderson's running this place like a dictatorship. Just don't let this job break you, Kylie. You're worth more than this," Jenna said, offering a sympathetic smile before leaving. Her words resonated with me as I finally headed home, well past the usual hour. The thought of leaving my job was scary, but so was the thought of enduring this toxic environment indefinitely. The situation at work with Mr. Henderson had deteriorated to an intolerable level. Each day was a grueling marathon of unrealistic demands and unrelenting criticism. The stress was unbearable, but I was trying to hold on, for the sake of financial security. However, there's only so much a person can take. It all came to a head on a Thursday, a day that started like any other, but would end up changing everything. Mr. Henderson summoned me to his office that morning. His office, always stark and intimidating, felt even more oppressive than usual. "Kylie, your performance is slipping. I'm not seeing the results I need," Mr. Henderson began, his voice cold and accusatory. I was already frayed from the constant pressure. "I'm doing everything I can, Mr. Henderson. The workload is immense, and I'm only human. That's no excuse. I expect better from you. You need to put in extra hours. No more excuses, or there will be consequences," he threatened, his eyes boring into mine. I felt a surge of frustration, mixed with desperation. "Extra hours? I'm already stretched thin. The demands you're putting on us are unreasonable." He leaned forward, a menacing look on his face. "This is a business, Kylie, not a charity. You do what needs to be done, or you can find employment elsewhere." The unfairness of his words, the blatant disregard for my well-being, it all became too much. My frustration boiled over into a resolve I didn't know I had. "That's it. I can't do this anymore. I quit," I announced, my voice steady yet loud, a stark contrast to the quivering feeling inside. Mr. Henderson's face turned a shade of red I hadn't seen before. "Quit? Fine. Leave. We don't need weak links here." I walked out of his office, and in that moment, despite the fear of uncertainty, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The relief, however, was short-lived. Returning home early, I found Mike in his usual spot on the couch. His surprise at seeing me so early quickly turned to concern when he saw my expression. "What happened, Kylie? Why are you home so early?" he asked, sitting up. I threw my bag down, the events of the day pouring out of me. I quit my job, Mike. I couldn't take it anymore. Mr. Henderson was impossible. Mike's concern quickly morphed into anger. You quit? Just like that? What about our bills, our expenses? How could you be so irresponsible? I was stunned by his lack of empathy. I expected some support, Mike. The job was killing me. I thought you, of all people, would understand. He stood up, his anger palpable. Support? You expect me to support us both now? You put us in a financial mess. The argument escalated quickly, with Mike's frustration boiling over into a demand I never saw coming. He retrieved a folder from the desk and slammed it on the coffee table. Here, sign these. I can't be with someone who can't hold down a job, he said, pushing the divorce papers toward me. I looked at the papers, then at him, my heart sinking. Divorce? You want a divorce over this? Yes, I do. You've just proven you can't be relied upon. Sign them, Kylie, he demanded. Feeling a complex mix of anger, sadness, and disbelief, I numbly took the pen and signed the papers. My marriage was ending, just like that. Now get out, he said coldly, once I had signed. I packed a few belongings and left the house. As I closed the door behind me, I felt an overwhelming sense of loss, but also a flicker of hope. I was leaving behind a job and a marriage that had become suffocating. Sitting alone in the modest hotel room, with the last remnants of my former life packed in a suitcase, I realized that I was at a crossroads. The weight of my failed marriage and the collapse of my career loomed over me, but within that chaos, there was a glimmer of opportunity, a chance to start anew. The following morning, as I sipped a solitary cup of coffee, my phone buzzed. It was Jenna, my former colleague and friend. Hey, Kylie, I heard about what happened. Are you okay? Jenna's voice was filled with concern. I sighed, staring out of the hotel window. I'm okay, Jenna. Just trying to figure out my next move. You know, maybe this is a blessing in disguise. A fresh start, you know, she said, trying to be encouraging. Her words resonated with me. Maybe you're right. I just need to find a new job, something less stressful. That's the spirit. And hey, I might have something for you. Remember Mr. Thompson, that client we both liked? He asked about you yesterday. After the call, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I spent the day updating my resume and reflecting on what I truly wanted from my career. The following week, I met with Mr. Thompson. He greeted me warmly, his office a stark contrast to the cold environment I had left. Kylie, I need someone with your expertise. The role is challenging but much less stressful than your last job, I promise, he said with a chuckle. We discussed the details, and everything about the job felt right, the responsibilities, the work environment, the balance it promised. By the end of our meeting, I had a new job, one that seemed like the perfect step forward. That night, in my hotel room, I called my mom to update her on everything. She had been worried about me since the divorce. Mom, I got a new job. And it's a good one, I said, a smile in my voice. Oh, Kylie, that's wonderful news. I'm so proud of you, she replied, her voice filled with relief and happiness. We talked for a long time, and her words of encouragement and love bolstered my spirits further. I went to bed that night with a sense of peace I hadn't felt in a long time. 3 months into my new job, life was gradually looking up. It was during this time of personal growth that I received an unexpected call from Mike, my ex-husband, which only underscored how much had changed. The phone rang early on a Saturday morning. Mike's voice, frantic and desperate, filled the line. Kylie, you have to come back. I'm struggling here. The bills, the debts, it's all too much, he pleaded, his voice a mix of panic and despair. I held the phone, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Mike, we're divorced. You made your decision. I've moved on, I responded, my voice firm yet calm. He continued to implore, but I need you, Kylie. Everything's falling apart. I'm drowning in debts, and I've lost so much money. His words no longer had the power they once might have. I'm sorry, Mike, but you have to manage on your own. I have my own life now, I said, ending the call with a sense of finality. After hanging up, I felt a reaffirmation of my newfound independence. Mike, who had once discarded me, now realized my value, but it was too late. Later that week, a conversation with Liz, a mutual friend, shed more light on Mike's situation. It's bad, Kylie. He's lost a ton of money. He's working 2 jobs now, but he keeps getting fired because of his drinking and gambling, she revealed. The news, while saddening, didn't surprise me. Mike had chosen his path, and now he was facing the consequences of his choices. It was a stark contrast to the stability and success I was experiencing. That same week, Mr. Thompson, my boss, called me into his office. He handed me an envelope. Kylie, you've exceeded our expectations. This is a bonus for your hard work, he said, his smile genuine. I was touched and grateful. Thank you so much, Mr. Thompson. I really appreciate this, I replied, feeling valued and recognized. Leaving his office, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction and achievement. My decision to leave a toxic job and a failing marriage was paying off in ways I had never imagined. As I walked home that day, past the familiar streets and faces, I realized how much my life had changed for the better. I had found a career that rewarded me and built a life of independence and strength.